Hello, and welcome back. It is Cellar Chats here at Second Glass. I'm Chris. I'm in the cellar. I'm chatting because it's one of the few things I'm really good at. I mean, I suppose that is subjective, but I think I'm pretty good at it. I don't know how to stop. We're talking the weekly wine flights this week at Second Glass, which start tonight because I'm filming this on Wednesday again. And we are heading to the Pacific Northwest, the P&W, if you will, off to taste some lovely wines from Washington State and from Oregon. We're going to start off in Washington, we're going to pop off to Oregon, and then we're going to head back into Washington. Starting with Andrew Will's, their Cuvée Lucia, or Lucia. I've never actually asked how you actually pronounce that. We're going to go with Lucia. Cuvée Lucia, Sauvignon Blanc, and then into Oregon for, you guessed it, Pinot Noir, but in Rosé format from the lovely and legendary Argyle winery in the Willamette Valley, and then heading off to our good buddy, our friend, our favorite, Gramercy Cellars, Syrah, Walla bottling. So let's get into this. Pacific Northwest, what do you guys know about it? I think what most people know about it is not accurate. Most people go, oh, Pacific Northwest, it's kind of cold and rainy, right? That is partly true, mostly just on the coast. But most of the Pacific Northwest is pretty arid and dry. Arid and dry are the same thing. Pretty arid and hot. Basically on the other side of the plateau, particularly in Washington State, where I think most people really think it's a much colder state than it is because of how far north it is. Don't get me wrong, it's cold there. They have beautiful forests. It does get rainy and cold. They do see snow. But most of the wine is grown in a fairly dry, warmer climate than what you would expect. And the same could really be said for Oregon. Oregon is a little bit more damp and a little more water-stricken. And most of the growing region are in the hilly, mountainous areas of Oregon. So not quite as arid or hot as Washington State, but it certainly has a much warmer climate than I think people assume it has. That being said, we're kind of tasting like the strong suits of the area. Washington really known for their Bordeaux varieties and Northern Rhone, Southern Rhone varieties. Oregon obviously known for Burgundy varieties, although that is changing. Same with Washington. There's a really big surgence in Washington for Italian grape varieties, particularly like Sangiovese and things like that, and Tempranillo. So like warm, again, makes sense. It's warm, it's pretty dry. Grape varieties that do well in dry, hot places. Tempranillo, a la Rioja, and Sangiovese, a la Tuscany. But I digress. Moving on. So this is Andrew Will. This is their estate vineyard. The Two Blondes vineyard is their only estate-owned vineyard. They source fruit from a lot of places throughout Yakima and the Walla area in Washington State. Their Two Blondes is located in Yakima. It's always Sauvignon Blanc dominant, and there's a little bit of Semillon here. This wine is really it's a Sauvignon Blanc that's made akin to like a white Bordeaux, as opposed to like a Sancerre or other Loire Valley Sauvignon Blancs. So that touch of Semillon you have in the background, a little bit more oak usage, gives you more of a textured wine, but still on the bright, fresh side. Right on the nose, you get a little bit of that like viscosity and like kind of floral richness that you get from Semillon. Now remember, Semillon is the famous grape that goes into the ever famous and ever expensive Sauterne in Bordeaux. So this is a grape that has qualities that kind of give it a honeyed floral characteristic, and that even shows through in like dry wines such as this wine. And even though it's only 15%, it's undeniably there. That texture is right at the top of your nose and on your palate. Wow. That is really pretty. Again, this wine sees some oak. I'm pretty sure there's no new oak. If there is, it's very, very little amounts, mostly neutral oak. So you get a rounded, textured mouthfeel to it. This is, a much more complex Sauvignon Blanc. Not to say that, Sauvignon Blancs made like Sancerre or Sancerre itself are not complex, but they oftentimes are very linear. They're bright, they're fresh, they kind of like just zip through your palate, and that's what people love about them. Whereas this wine with, again, that little bit of Sauvignon, the way that it's produced, you know, the mindset when they go into harvesting, they're harvesting for a slightly different like style of wine. And then a little bit of oak gives it a roundness, a texture, and a mouthfeel that you just don't experience in a lot of Sauvignon Blancs anymore. Mostly because people just don't make them in this style, which makes it lovely. I know I rambled a little bit there. It was pretty good, right? But it also makes it a really great food wine because it can match a lot more dishes. You know, again, being styled after Bordeaux, white Bordeaux that is. You know, this is an area that is known for eating a lot of fish, freshwater fish particularly. This is a great seafood wine. I honestly want like, I mean, I'm sure Chef has got some kind of fish or mussels on the menu right now. I haven't looked at it lately. But I want like some skin on, like crispy skin, like snapper or like black sea bass or something of that nature. I mean, that would be so good with like a little like vegetables and maybe some like rice and or pasta on the side. I don't know. Whatever he has going that's seafood driven is the way to go. Again, that is Andrew Will Cuvée Lucia Sauvignon Blanc from the Yakima Valley. All right, going on over here. You know what I really like? I'm going to point it out right away, and you guys could have called it, is the color on this wine. So often when you get rosés, and this is not like a negative thing here. Argyle is not a small winery. These guys make a lot of wine, and they've been in the area for a very long time. They're pioneers of making high quality sparkling wine, particularly from Oregon, but also just making really great white and red wines from Oregon. And you know, what ends up happening so often is that people will just add a rosé into their portfolio, and being in the industry, I'll look at it and I'll go, oh, they just added a rosé to add a rosé, and it looks exactly like everybody else wants it to look. But, you know, maybe it was just this year, but the color on this is not a rosé that somebody was like in marketing that said, hey, we should make a rosé. No, they made this rosé because they wanted to make a good rosé. Because if they wanted to just make a rosé to sell a rosé, they would have made it a lot lighter than this. That's just my personal opinion. Don't take that to the bank. That's just how I feel about it. Oh, wow. That is so pretty. I mean, this is much more akin to a Sancerre rosé, which is really like the style that I think that Oregon really should be looking towards. You know, rosé, although there are some really amazing places in Burgundy that make rosé, it's not highly common, and they're hard to come by. Particularly in the Marsanne region, they make some incredible rosé from Pinot Noir. But in Sancerre, they make some really great Sancerre rosé, which I happen to love. And that is what this reminds me of. Really vibrant, fresh, mineral, crisp, like kind of citrusy, saline characters. I mean, that color is absolutely gorgeous. Wow. It's very subtle on the nose. Like I could have, you know, feels like some light strawberries, not like overly ripe strawberries, but just like, you know, just right. Where maybe you went out, you did like a U-pick, and maybe you picked the strawberries that they would have told you weren't quite ripe enough, but they're kind of that perfect balance between a little bit of ripe fruit and really bright acidity. A little bit of lemon. I mean, this is, as we move into the week, it's supposed to be like in the 80s this week. This is so bright and refreshing. This is going to be the kind of wine you want to drink. Again, Argyle Rosé Pinot Noir from the Willamette Valley from the legendary Argyle Winery. All right, crescendoing this week, Gramercy Cellars. I mean, I honestly think we just never get tired of talking and sharing wines from these guys. They do. Greg and his team do an amazing job. Year after year, they make excellent wines, good people. So this is their Walla bottling of Syrah. It does get co-fermented a little bit with some Viognier, so classic like Côte Rôtie recipe. Although calling it a recipe is not really accurate, but anyways, moving on. But you know that Viognier adds a little bit of like, oddly enough, the white grapes, and the same with like using like grape. The stems kind of helps balance the color in the wine, so you get a little bit more concentrated, like more pure color, and you get like a lifted aroma to it. This is kind of gamey, smoky, peppery on the nose, but with some brambly, blackberry, raspberry fruit. I mean, It's not an overly heavy wine, but it's also not a light wine. I mean, we are still talking Syrah, we are talking Washington State. Like I said, Walla, not exactly the coldest place on the planet, as opposed to what you might think when you look at like a map. Wow. So much texture, really gorgeous silkiness on the palate, more of that dark fruit. I mean, this is Syrah from the New World for me always comes in like two categories. It comes in the like overly big, rich, I'm trying to be big Napa Cabernet, or it comes in the I'm really trying to emulate the Northern Rhone and make this vibrant, fresh like style. And this wine to me kind of bridges that gap. There is ripeness, there is texture, there's good amount of fruit, but it also feels lifted. It feels vibrant. It's got a little more of that like savory herbal like characteristic going on that I really love, and like Northern Rhone inflected or stylized Syrah. Stylized? Yeah, we'll go with stylized. That's probably not a great word to use because nobody wants to be like, oh, I style my wine. That sounds like you're making really strange, adjustments in the cellar. None of these guys are doing that, as far as I know. Peppery, fresh. I like this with a little chill. So if you come in, and you buy a bottle, which you should, because you'll love it, I'd maybe ask for it with a little chill. That'd be my call. Order either the pork shank or the lamb shank or whatever he happens to have going on. He kind of rotates that dish every once in a while. Again, let's do the quick wrap up. Andrew Will, Sauvignon Blanc, their Cuvée Lucia, followed by Argyle, Rosé, a Pinot Noir, and ending again, Gramercy Cellars, Syrah, Walla. So good. So much fun. Thank you for tuning in. Please come out, support small businesses, support great restaurants and people bringing amazing food and beverage to you, because this is what makes our town so much fun. So be safe, be smart. I'll see y'all next week.